Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Kym, thanks so much for joining me today. How's it going?
Hi, Giuliano. Great to be here. It's so nice to be here with you and your listeners and talking about confidence, vivacious living, and all things under the sun.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to explore it. I know when we were talking beforehand, one of the things that for me, I feel like ever since I was a little kid, like I always have had just kind of this outgoing personality. I wouldn't say I've never been afraid to do things, but I have always had just kind of a measure of self-confidence. And so when I've talked to other people before and they've asked me about that, like, how do I develop self-confidence? I don't really know. I don't know the answer. To me, it feels like inherent. And so when you said, hey, this is what I talk about, I'm kind of excited to hear what you have to say about it, to improve my own, but also so other people can benefit as well.
So you're not short on ambition?
No.
Me either.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally, as far back as I can remember, I've always been this way. I've just done stuff like I don't, maybe this is part of it too. And maybe it has to do with, obviously you'll tell me, but when it comes to confidence, I feel like if someone was like, how are you confident? I'm like, I just don't care what the outcome is going to be. That's it. Like, I'm just like, whatever the outcome is, it doesn't matter, because there's nothing that has happened that I feel like I can't recover from, or that I couldn't learn from, or that I couldn't look at with like a sense of humor later. So
That's a great approach. And I think that lends to a lot of the success you've had already.
thanks. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about it. I mean, like I said, I don't really know too much about what you do, but like, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Let me give you a snapshot of where I'm at, and then we can get into some of these different elements of how we build confidence.
Okay, sure.
I'd like to say that sport and play have been a really big part of my life. And over the past few years specifically, that's been the case. So my husband was ill for almost 3 years, and
Okay.
that was the last of our 12 years of being together.
Mm.
I like to play. I like to be spontaneous. I like to go. And he said, when I'm gone, you're going to need some structure. And I thought, well, structure's boring. I like expansion.
Mm.
And yet he was correct. To have a reason to get up every day, to have people to connect with. When there's a sense of loss, which people get afraid of prematurely, it can hinder the confidence to get out and explore again. So I thought, well, what am I going to do when he's not here? I'm going to go golfing. And I chose 100 new golf courses, took the van, threw the dogs in, packed everything up, and we drove 30,000 miles last year.
Wow.
To explore this adventurous terrain we have in our country, to get to utilize my physical body in a very specific present-oriented way, meet new people, have breakdowns and meltdowns and sad times when I had them, and then show up again and keep trying and be able to thrive in the whole of that experience, not just trying to make it cookie cutter pretty, letting the diverse range of emotions, the good games, the bad games, the good shots, the bad shots, all be part of the growth, and let the outcome be what it is, like you said.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So you and your husband were together for 12 years, you said, before he passed away?
Yes.
But it sounds like it was something that was, once you knew that that's what was happening, that it was kind of like expected. It was on somewhat of a timeline.
We didn't know exactly what that timeline was. We knew that there was a weekend where he went to the hospital. He almost didn't make it out. And when he did, it was an instant shift, reprioritize, cut out what doesn't work anymore, cut out the unnecessary, cut out the stress, connect in the meaningful ways that we could with whatever time we had left, because we didn't know. So we had conversations every morning over coffee. It became the book I wrote about his life. I have other books I'm going to write as well as a result of these talks. And then I wanted to be able to create. So I would cook meals for him, create a cookbook. I would write. I built a new van so that we had a space to travel in if he got better. And then again, I had to detach from the future to be in the present moment and enjoy whatever time we had left together.
Yeah, yeah. So are you saying, just so I understand, this first time that he went to the hospital, was that like the first time you found out that anything was going on?
Yes and no.
Okay.
And I'll explain. Steve had been in a motorcycle accident before I met him.
Okay.
Such an intense accident where it took 28 reconstructive surgeries, 3 years in a hospital bed, and three more to learn how to walk. And he could walk and play golf and do things again.
Holy cow.
It shifted his entire trajectory.
Mm,
So let's just take the amount of metal parts, implants, things that helped him function as a human had natural repercussions from that much work.
mm,
So I called him high maintenance. Yet this trip to the hospital seemed to take any minor issue, accelerate it, and combine them all together.
mm,
And that was a mystery to us. What triggered that?
mm. I see. No, it's so my wife and I were just watching this TV show last night where, and some people might be familiar with it, it's called The Pit. And there's this episode where these, there's a kid who's like in college who he's like a good student and like he's staying up, late studying and all this stuff. And because of that, he needs help sleeping. And so he buys, some Xanax off of somebody. And because of that, there's fentanyl in it or something, and the kid dies. And he's just like good kid, right? He's not like out partying. He literally, it was because of you studying so hard, right? My wife and I were talking about this afterward because we have a son who's 9 months old, and so we were just thinking about like, wow, that would be crazy if something like that happened. And I'm mentioning this because in that show, right, when that was happening, you're thinking about how quickly it feels like things can change, right? Especially for these parents with their son, like they probably had zero worry that anything like that would ever happen to him, right? And all of a sudden, there he's gone, right? And so when you're telling me this about what happened, it's kind of like, it just has me thinking about that. Like, wow, yeah, that's kind of nuts how things can change so quickly. But it's interesting what you said, that you guys, like the changes you guys started making when you like found out that he was on this downhill.
Yeah, I notice in life things can seem to be going along smoothly, and you have the extra bandwidth to handle the more annoying colleagues, the stressful family relationships, the business that's, it's still moving along and making money, but it takes a lot more energy to manage. And
Mm,
yet you find in these more traumatic situations, the bandwidth goes away.
mm,
I was caregiving almost instantly despite no training. I
mm,
had studied sports kinesiology. I knew the body very well,
yeah.
and yet I wasn't going to be able to solve the problem. We needed a medical team. I needed to become an advocate. Just daily tasks of you as caring for a 9-month old. You're doing all of these beautiful things because you want them to have life. And I
Mm,
wanted Steve to have the highest quality of life. So that meant putting a lot of other things on hold.
mm,
And then there comes this identity shift of, well, that running a business, this relationship I had with X, Y, and Z person, a lot of those defined me or defined us. And there becomes a detachment, and we have to be able to handle that mentally and emotionally, as well as just logistically in our lives. And that's
mm.
something we can practice before I think trauma sets in or a disaster occurs.
Yeah, yeah. So just so I understand the timeline, because what you said was that he was in the hospital. Was it 3 years after that you said that he passed away?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. So this was
Yeah.
like 3 years then of like a complete shift from the way things were previously in your life.
Yes, we had been on the road, traveling, teaching, a
Yeah.
lot of
What is it that
outward
you
expression.
guys were doing beforehand?
Yeah, so the It Just Makes Sense book, we taught tools to manage your emotions, to shift beliefs,
Mm,
take those subconscious patterns, get rid of the ones that aren't working, put in new ones,
mm,
reduce stress, improve communication and relationships. I taught sports psychology, he taught emotional kinesiology. We blended the two and really helped people find a way that they could be more alive,
mm,
ditch the stressors, And when they showed up, be able to handle them in a more poised and graceful way.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of interesting that that's what you were teaching people before this happened, right?
And I think that gave me the capacity to handle it, as stressful as it was,
Yeah.
with a foundation. So it was almost like I had a skill set, and this new challenge taught me to up level them.
Mm, interesting. Like it was almost like it was like battle testing the things that you had learned and been teaching.
It's like you get to the Super Bowl and you lose. You've
Mm,
done all this great work. I don't feel like I lost in the sense that I was a failure. I think you can do really well and have these performance elements in your life, things going well, a sense of coordination, and yet you can maybe get to that time, that one game, that time of life, and your performance isn't a match.
mm,
And it's hard, and you grow because of that. Like you said, I think choosing to be present through it all was a really big gift. And I am proud of myself for not stuffing those painful moments because they allowed me to experience the joy.
mm. Interesting. Can you explain a little bit more? Like you said, you didn't stuff down the painful moments, and that's what allowed you to experience joy.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people want to avoid pain. I think that's maybe part of our DNA.
Yeah.
Our brain doesn't like new. That's a challenge. It wants to conserve energy for us. Yet at the same time, when we embrace new challenges, that's how our brain rewires. It's neuroplastic. It shifts to help us adapt. So it seems like
Mm,
it's contradictory in some way. Yet I think of the emotional spectrum. The emotions allow us to make sense and heighten our experiences, make sense of and heighten our experiences. And I'll put it this way: imagine love as a coin. On one side, you have grief or sadness or pain, and on the other side, you have joy.
mm,
If I was to consider myself as someone who loves, who wants to love and connect, the grief is really just me sensing I'm unable to flow love in that channel anymore. And it's a reflection of me really getting to love so intensely. So in my marriage, Steve and I could connect, we could laugh, we could travel, we could create. And when he left, it seemed like that avenue for play was gone,
mm.
for trusting somebody at that level was gone. I wanted to experience all of that, missing him and loving him. Because if I tried to put that sadness, just tuck it away when he was gone, just set it aside, or even while he was ill, if I
Mm.
pretended he wasn't as sick as he was, or that the reality he'd be gone someday wasn't there,
Yeah.
it's almost like dimming the capacity to experience the moment. And so if I was
Mm.
going to step into another moment, we're this whole being, and I can't turn the volume down on one area of my life and not another at the same time.
Yeah, that really makes sense. It's like our emotional capacity. Like if you try to stuff down an emotion, all you're doing, like you said, is like turning the volume down on your emotional capacity. So it doesn't matter if it's a quote unquote bad emotion or good emotion, you're just turning down emotion in general. Therefore, wouldn't be able to experience the positive, like the joyful end of it.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. How did okay, so I have a question. After that first instance in the hospital, did Steve know that like, hey, this is going to end in me dying and it's going to happen within the next approximate amount of time? Did he know that?
He made peace with that.
Okay.
I think we often are optimistic for the best case outcome.
Okay.
At least we had that in mind.
Yeah.
And we continue to go to doctors to find out let's check this off the list. Is this the cause? No. Is this the cause? No. Is
Mm,
this the cause? If you continue to find maybe that root issue, then perhaps health could return and there'd be an extended timeline together. However, as the months progressed and we weren't getting answers and symptoms continued to worsen, I think his response was, I'm going to put the medical system on hold. I want to live my life in the highest quality I can
mm.
with whatever time is left and see what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the things I'm curious of is how he did handle it. Like, what was it like during that time when he was finally like, you know what, I'm just gonna focus on being present and joyful. Like, I'm curious from like when he found out in the hospital that things were going downhill to when he actually passed away, like what that journey looked like for him.
I'd like to say it's probably similar to what many of us experience on an everyday basis, where
Okay.
there's a variety of emotions that come together all at once or sprinkle the day. So there were times where sitting at home, watching the cardinals in the yard, watching the neighbors walk by, watching a sunset, those were completely satisfying. And there were days, and there was actually a period of time where he was in so much pain, all he talked about was dying. Can you help me take my life? I want to end my life. And this is someone who spent 6 years really recrafting his whole identity, understanding your mind affects your body,
Mm,
wanting to be the best you, and having tools to do so. So for me as Kym, watching somebody with that skill set have that much struggle was a learning experience because I couldn't fix it. I couldn't
mm,
change it. Different life lesson for me and him.
sure.
The pain went away for a while. He could again appreciate the new experiences. He got well. He had maybe a bounce back for a month or two where we got to take a van trip. We went to Georgia. We were in Florida at the time. We went up to Georgia and South Carolina and could escape the small world we had been living in. I say
Mm,
escape, but even just having a shift in environment helped shift perspective. But I really believe over the course of that 2.5 and 3 years, he made peace with, I'm ready to go. I have done my best. Knowing that I was going to write books and he was contributing to something that was going to live beyond his time in his
mm.
body, I saw really as purposeful for him, even if he wasn't going to stick around that much longer.
If you've ever thought about writing a book, this is for you. Quick heads up, I'm going to share something I've personally used, and if you check it out through my link, I may earn a commission. When I was working on my books, I learned how to do it all from the team at Peaceful Profits. They're the ones who helped me understand how to actually approach the whole process, from having the idea all the way to getting it out into the world. So if writing a book has been on your mind, whether to grow your business, get speaking gigs, or just make an impact by sharing your story, you have to check out Peaceful Profits. Go to author.howtobeaperson.co or just click the link in the show notes now. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I think all of us are aware of our mortality, right? Like we know that we could die, but I think most of us believe that we're not going to for a very long time, right?
I
And
think that's a
so
survival mechanism.
yeah. So like to think that something like that it could change so quickly. I think what's interesting is that not everybody has the opportunity to and like the time from something happening to actually passing away to be able to like make peace with it and to be able to even like contemplate that that's what's going to happen, right? Like most, I mean, I guess I can't speak for most people, but it seems that if you're going to pass away, it's like it's one of two things, right? Either you're going to be diagnosed with something or something's going to happen where it's like this ramp down, which is like what he experienced, or it's just going to be sudden and like you don't have a chance to think about it at all, right? Like, it just
Yeah.
happens and you're gone. um and I guess I don't know what most people's experience is. It's probably more the first one, right? A ramp down. But I guess I was thinking, like I said, because that TV show, that episode has popped in my head where it's like, oh, you don't have a chance sometimes, like that was my grandfather. He passed away in 2014, and he was still working till like he worked till the day he died. He was literally on his way to work. He used to take the train into Chicago, and he would take, after he got off the train, he would take a taxi, and he died in the taxi on the way from, like, it wasn't even like a far drive. It was like a 5 minute ride, and he passed away in the taxi. And my grandmother was the exact opposite, right? She was still alive after that. And then she slowly deteriorated for like several years afterwards. So I don't necessarily have anything to share about that. It's just kind of interesting to think about that contrast and like, like, I guess for myself and probably anyone listening is like, which would I prefer? Like, right? Would I prefer to just be ripped from reality in one moment and not have a chance to reflect? Or would I love to be able to have that actual ramp down period where I could think about what I've done and maybe what I'm leaving behind?
I think you're giving a great sales pitch for being present and doing the best you can at any moment, because we don't know, right?
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, so I have a question. When was this that your husband passed away?
At the end of 2023.
So it was just over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you, I mean, right, we've just been talking for like 20 minutes or something like that. But I feel like you seem more put together and like generally happier than someone would expect within that amount of time.
And that I would attribute to the feeling all of the way through it. This isn't just a happy face that I'm faking.
Yeah.
There are still days that are sad days,
Yeah.
and I let that be. Maybe it's just a moment of a memory, like walking into Costco and smelling, oh, we used to do Costco trips, and you have a moment, and I let that emotion go through my system. Sometimes if it's something stronger, it'll linger. Like I found his pocket rock the other day. That surprised me.
Hmm.
And I can have the heartfelt moments. And when I was writing this memoir and traveling, there were days I wanted to lay in bed all day, and I would let myself, because I knew, again, I want the volume on for life. And I like to live big. And I knew that there's a lot more I want to live. And I value authenticity. I value being present and connecting with people. And so I've given myself permission to feel all this way through. And then I can be genuine with you here and talk about Steve in love and appreciation, because he's helped me be who I am right now.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I have been through some really serious stuff myself, and I've had what I just said to you. I realize that people have said that to me in the past, and what you just described is like exactly it, but I didn't have like a way to put it into words. But that's exactly what it is. Like, I actually I had a conversation not that long ago on the podcast where, like, I have this theory that like people don't like move on from things or heal from things because they're not actually allowing themselves to feel the feelings that that like came up in them when they had that experience. And it's kind of, and this isn't like a judgment, it's just kind of ironic because they're afraid of feeling those feelings, and therefore they end up suffering for way longer than they need to, than if they had just accepted that they were having these feelings and allowed themselves to feel them.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, that's cool. I had another guest who like really disagreed with me on it before, and he really pushed back. But I think I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that, because I think that it is part of, it probably like bleeds into other areas of life as well, like not just like our emotional health, but our health in general. That I think that like when we go through things, that if we stop ourselves from experiencing the emotions that come along with those experiences, that we end up holding on to them in more ways than one, right? Like not just like emotionally, you just walk around with these emotional scars, but also potentially like health wise too.
Yes. So I want to say two things as a result of what you just said.
Okay.
The first is, while I agree with you, I don't judge people who choose maybe a harder path.
Okay.
Take Steve, for example. He was living a very stressful life. He maybe didn't notice the signs that there was a different way of doing it. And then he got a wake up call with his motorcycle accident.
Mm.
I believe we have this opportunity to shift course, find a smoother path, learn, pivot, try again, have new skills built, pivot, learn more, experience. Maybe that didn't work, pivot.
Yeah.
I don't believe we have to have suffering or trauma to accept the invitation to a new way of being.
Mm.
And I think there can be valuable lessons in the suffering and challenging times. So I don't judge people if they're taking that route. I think there
Yeah.
could be value for everybody in it all.
You mean the route of not feeling the feelings? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
I'm with you. I wouldn't choose that because I if and when I find myself suffering, I go, "Thank you. I'd prefer to feel better." And then
Mm.
I have tools to get back to that better feeling place sooner.
Mm.
I think deep down we know it's more normal to feel good than bad. And I just find it interesting what it takes for different people to maybe come to that realization and then choose to feel good.
Mm. Interesting.
So let's sidebar that or table that for a second. I'd like to go back to what you said about everything being interconnected.
Okay.
I like to think of the mind, body, and emotions as maybe gears that are spinning and working together.
Okay.
If you have, let's say, a physical injury, oop, it's like a cog in the wheel and it
Mm.
stops things for a second. Obviously, we're continually in motion, but let's just use this as an example. Your injury stops your daily habits. My mom broke her ankle recently, so she's stopping volleyball. She's not connecting with her friends. Your mind can go into a dark place when you're
Mm.
unable to do the things you're used to doing or be the person you're used to being. And so the mind, the thoughts, and the emotions have an immediate effect because of that injury. But you mentioned, well, what if you have an emotional issue? That can cause physical dysfunction. That's a cog in that wheel, but it's
Mm.
grinding the gears to maybe a halt in the other areas. If you're thinking a certain, feeling a certain way, your thoughts shift and your body has a whole different cascade of chemicals going on. And then I think of thoughts as the lens through which we're seeing life, the beliefs that we're holding, how we approach the world, how we present ourselves in the world, how we perceive the world is around us. Is it friendly? Is it unfriendly? Am I safe? Am I unsafe? Those thoughts also have an effect on our physiology and our emotions. So I believe that we have access to step in with our thoughts, with our emotions, or with our body to put those gears back into motion.
Mm.
I also believe that if you don't address the root cause at any one of those areas, it's going to keep causing the grinding. It's going to keep causing you to stop and
Mm.
reassess. And I think maybe you've noticed this. There are people who might not want to look at that root cause because that can be scary. It can be
Mm.
intimidating. And they'll continue to go through life just when the gears grind and they get stuck, they just go, okay, what's my next immediate solution? And they'll just go through life with a really hard grind more of the time
Mm.
until you start to address some of those things. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, that really does make a lot of sense. I like talking about this stuff because I think most of us are not really equipped with like knowledge to deal with this, right? Like we go to school and learn about stupid stuff that we don't even I mean like I got amazing grades in school, okay? Like literally like I for the first probably 6 years, 6 years of schooling, I got like 100% in every class. And I always got great grades after that. Okay. I always did really well in school. But like I don't use any of that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of how much of this of what I learned in school I actually use, right? So we're given this information about math and science and all of that. But dealing with emotions, which is like feels like such a big part of life, is just totally disregarded, and we're kind of left to fend for ourselves, where it's like, well, maybe someone went to school and got a degree for psychology and so they know a little bit, and maybe this person is really into like self-help books and so they've read a lot and they've kind of created their own theory around it. And this person just listens to a lot of podcasts. And so they hear something, that makes sense. Like it's just kind of, we're just left to fend for ourselves when it comes to this.
As you say that, it reminds me of how I got into this in the first place.
Okay.
Because I had a master's degree in sports kinesiology, a really detailed understanding of this physiology, how our body works, how it performs optimally, how to fine tune it. And at that time, I was angry. I was anxious. My mind couldn't turn off. Although we can never turn it off, we can just redirect it. But it was running circles in concepts I didn't like. There was so much doubt and stress. And my father passed away when I was 13. And I did not have tools then to understand. So I thought, well, let's just focus on my body. Let's take care of my body so I don't end up dying young. And at the same time, no one taught me about emotions until I found a friend who was into yoga. That was a gateway to use my body in a new way, to let emotions flow through, to maybe understand energy a little differently, to learn that my mind it's automatic, that brain being a thought generating organism. However, it just like breathing, it doesn't have to be automatic. I can step in and have some control. And that was also the time I met Steve, and he had been teaching everything that helped him get well and find balance in his life. So it was through a series of, again, I had my body moving in a great harmony, but it kept getting stuck because my emotions were so out of control in a negative way. It wasn't until I said, okay, I'm going to look at some of this and build practices into my life, just like you'd go train for a sporting event or get up and brush your teeth every day. What are things I can do to keep my mind and body in balance so that all of me has the capacity to be its best version?
Yeah, it really makes a lot of sense. I have a question. Before, when you were talking about the gears, what were the ones you mentioned? It was mind, body, what else?
I said mind, body, and emotions.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. I was thinking about it because, yeah, it's these things that like you said, the way that you got into it and how like your path into it, like we have these things that are very well established when it comes to like how our physical body works. But when it comes to even our mental health, right? I've talked a lot about this because I have my own opinion on I know that there's people who their entire life is dedicated to this and they've gone to school and all of those things. Right. So I can't sit here and say that I'm qualified, in that way. But for me, like I look at a lot of it and I'm like, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't agree with that. And just because it's been, it's in a college course or just because it's in a textbook to me doesn't mean that it's correct, and I'm saying all of that to say, I don't think that it's as established as maybe it seems like it is, and we're definitely not like on a mass basis, like learning how our mind and our emotions work in the same way that we learn maybe how our body works, which I guess also our body is still I think there's a lot we think we know about our body that we don't actually know yet too.
Yeah, just take the field of epigenetics and how our thoughts and intentions can change our gene expression. Yep. We were always taught as kids, at least in the era I was raised, that, well, genes control your biological expression. Well, now we're understanding there could be someone behind the scenes, the wizard behind the curtain. The mind can affect
flipping the switches on and off.
Yeah, so there is so much we're learning now. And if we can remain curious, I like to think anything that's going to offer us more empowerment and autonomy in those choices we make, at least that leads me to believe this is a good direction. I tend to find that anything that constricts us or defines us with limits, I'm too much of a rebel for that. I'm going to challenge it probably every step along the way.
Hey, it's Giuliano. I'm just popping in here to say how much I appreciate you being here listening and that I hope you're enjoying the show. The more support that the show gets, the more episodes can be produced. If you can only support by sharing it with others or leaving a review, I appreciate that so much. But if you're the type of person who would like to support the show directly, you can do so by visiting howtobeaperson.co and click support the show. Or just click the link in the show notes. Every bit of support means the world to me, and no matter how you choose to support the show, I appreciate you being here listening. I love what I do, and it's because of people like you who listen to the show that I get to keep doing it. Thanks again so much for being here. All right, back to the episode. I love that. I totally agree. That's one of the main pillars of this podcast, and the reason why I started it is curiosity. I think that as soon as we establish that this is how it is, I'm like, oh, now you're wrong. You were on the right path, and now that you said you know for sure, well, now we're done. Like, now you just don't. Now I know you don't know. Because I feel like there's always more, you know.
And I like to find the best operating framework for now. I want to leave room for better.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, one thing I'm curious of, because you said your father passed away when you were 13. I mean, I'm sure you've thought about this, but I'm curious, like, do you feel like that's like kind of a weird pattern for you, that it was like, oh, I lost two people that were important to me like way earlier than I should have?
Like I'm living Groundhog's Day? Definitely crossed my mind. What I find, something I appreciate about going through it with Steve, it allowed me a perspective that I did not get as a 10 to 13-year-old. I couldn't understand my mother. My mom was a caregiver. Why could she not be there for us? Why did I step in and help raise my 3 younger siblings? Why was she not emotionally available? It allowed me to understand my mom in an entirely new light. It allowed me to understand the process of the body shutting down. I mean, to get woken up at, let's say, 2 a.m. to say goodbye to your dad who is in his final stages of, I mean, that breathing, if you've not experienced that in the final hours of life or days of life, it can be shocking. It can be scary. So getting to walk through it in a loving, present way as an adult allowed me to maybe soothe that 13-year-old in me that didn't understand.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that it almost seems like it was kind of a chance for you to like heal from that past experience by experiencing something kind of very similar with a lot of parallels later.
Completely. And to now recognize being angry and stuffing my emotions was not a path that worked.
Interesting. I'm curious, you know, for someone who has lost someone to, like, multiple people close to them, like you have, what are your beliefs about like where they are now and like the nature of all of that?
I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
When I was writing this book with Steve, part of it was transcribing the audios. So I had his voice with me for several months as I did that. I could have used AI. It was more fun for me to dissect the nuggets. And just like we're having this conversation that goes in a lot of different areas,
Yeah.
ours did too. So I would go through and dissect, where are these nuggets going to go? And as I was writing Miracle on the Mountainside, in which he did have a near-death experience on the side of the mountain, which we can, that's another interesting topic.
Yeah. This is Steve, you're saying he had that experience.
Yes.
Okay.
But this is me writing his book. I'm talking about the motorcycle accident, the near-death experiences, the very short snippets of time that identified his life. Because if you were to step back and say, what were the 20 stories that defined me? That's a really interesting question to ask yourself. If you could pull out these experiences that you felt taught you the most or rounded out your character, that's a fun exercise to do. I actually did it after writing his book.
Yeah, that sounds like the makings of a memoir. That's just like, what are the main stories? That's so funny. I never thought about it like that. It's such a good way to do it. What are the main stories that influenced who I am right now? Just plot them out, and there's your memoir.
Exactly. And it was actually a rough day. And I'm sitting in the van with the dogs in Avila Beach. And it was such an obvious moment as the sunlight caught my eye off the sparkling ocean. It was like just so bright. It caught my eye. I turned my head. I saw seagulls flying by. I could hear the sea lions barking on the wharf nearby. The salty air was coming in through the windows. And I had a sense of peace come over me. And it was as though he said, look for me where I am, not where I'm not. I was writing stories about his physical life, and I could miss him not sitting in the van there next to me. Or I could
Hmm.
look out and see the beautiful harmony that is our world, looking up at the stars, sensing beyond what our senses can honestly take in any given moment. I mean, we only see a tiny spectrum of visible light. So, my belief is that this consciousness that is us, the frequency, the channel, if you will, right now the channel is playing through my body here, and I get to enjoy all of the tangible things.
Hmm.
I believe Steve left his body, but there's still a Steve channel in the universe. And that makes me feel like there's a sense of connection. And I can tap into that when I see light sparkling off water, or a beautiful sunset, or maybe the bright red bird that flies by. It catches my attention and makes me smile, thinking there's more out there than what I can take in any given moment.
Hmm.
And I can choose to connect with those who are in body or those who are out of body with my thoughts. I can send a loving prayer. I can thank them. I can ask for an idea. And that allows me to think beyond time and space and not feel lost.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think when it comes to like the nature of reality, like even what we understand, we know how little we understand, right? Like, and that's just from what we know we don't know. Like, what about what we don't know we don't know, right? Like, there's so much, and even in the context of like your senses as well, right? Like, what we know we're not able to sense, we know what that is, like some of it, but we don't know all of it. Like how much of there is out there that we can't sense, that we're not even aware we can't sense. And I do think that like what you said was really interesting about like not focusing on where he's not, but focusing on where he is. It made me think of just kind of the silly, like glass half empty or half full kind of thing. And I think sometimes we take little sayings like that for granted, but that's like a perfect example of it, where it's like you're just looking and like, oh, not there, not there, not there, not there. It's like you're wasting your time, right? Like just look at where they are, not where they're not. And now it's like, wow, that's a perspective shift right there for sure.
Which side of the love coin do I want to live on today? The
Mhm.
missing or the actual channels of love I get to experience? I'm
Yeah.
going to choose the active flow. And that reminds me of one other thing. Did you ever watch or read Angels and Demons, The Da Vinci Code?
No,
Dan
no.
Brown has a series of books where there's a symbologist and he goes on these mysteries and he solves
Yeah.
mysteries.
Yeah. I'm like somewhat familiar with it, but I've never read or seen it. I don't know. For some reason I never did.
Dan Brown just recently wrote a book called The Secret of Secrets.
Okay.
I believe that's the name. Secret Behind Secrets, something like that. And it took him 8 years to write it because he took so much scientific research about consciousness and
Mm.
then wove it into a fictional story. It's fascinating. It's just this idea of, well, what if there's something bigger than this moment or me and you right here? It's fun to play with that question and then see what answers show up because we're all going to interpret that differently. And that's kind of nice. We can learn from each other in that.
Yeah. Do you think that, um, like someone's, well, okay, actually, you know what? I want to hear about what you said when Steve had a near death experience.
Well, that was fascinating. So he was lying there bleeding out pretty much.
Okay.
And it's in a nearby canyon here in the mountains. And he's hiked it a bunch. And he said, I hope coyotes don't get here before I take my last breath. You kind of make light of it and you go,
Yeah.
I have to surrender. I can't fix this. He could
Mm,
not get himself up to walk out of the canyon. He had too many broken bones.
okay. And just
And
so I understand context, this was post accident. Was this after the 3 year period? Was this during the 3 year period?
okay, so when he had the motorcycle accident, the near death experience the first time, This was way back before I met him. This was Miracle on the Mountainside, the introduction. This is him going on his motorcycle up the mountains, going
Oh,
over
I
the
see. I
cliff.
see. So
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
the near death experience is the original accident that he. I see. I see. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we're circling back now.
And when was this, by the way? What year?
1990.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's a while back.
Yeah.
Okay, but check this out. So you surrender and you go, I can't fix this. I don't know what heaven's like. I don't know what the universe is like. I don't know what's beyond my last breath. So you surrender into that and you go, okay, I've done my best,
Mm,
which will tie into the confidence that we talk about today, because this idea of I've done my best. And in that moment, he finds himself sitting on a rock, looking at his body, looking at the firemen that are coming down to help bring him back to life, to resuscitate him. And he's out of pain. There's no fear. There's this overwhelming sense of peace, as though he's woven into the fabric of the whole universe. He doesn't know where the hell he is, but it feels pretty good to be there. And he's watching all of this and no rush of time. But he said he heard a voice that said, well, do you want to go back or do you want to stay? And in that time frame, he didn't have to rush to make a decision. It was, well, look, there's a book that he was given in front of him that showed his life in his own handwriting. This was his interpretation of the experience. And he could see where he was on his path and had moments of doing really great things and moments where, man, I said that and that hurt somebody else's feelings. I would do that differently. I
mm,
might learn from my mistakes. And not a sense of regret, but just, oh, that's interesting. And he had just gained custody of his son at the time. And he remembers very strongly thinking, I want to go back. I want to be there for TJ. And he didn't know what that would look like. It's not like he was given all of the answers in
yeah.
that moment. It was just, no, the calling of, I sense all of this power that is me, that I'm connected to in the universe, and I'm going to figure it out. And he couldn't have predicted the challenges that awaited him once he got back.
Mm,
And there are some really amazing encounters that happen as a result of that healing journey, which allowed him to propel forward with the continued optimism that I'm going to get well, that I'm on the right path. And we have those little inklings too. I don't want to go over a cliff or, walk to that white light before I figure it out.
mm. If you don't have life insurance or you've been meaning to update your coverage, this is your reminder. I have my own policy because I want my wife and son to be taken care of no matter what. And if you're responsible for anyone, it's one of the smartest things you can do. Go to life.howtobeaperson.co or tap the link in the show notes to get covered. All you have to do is fill out the short form and a trusted agent will reach out and help you figure out your options. All right, back to the episode. Have you ever had an experience like this, or you just know of Steve's?
I personally have not. I've been a long time meditator.
Okay.
And I've even done those meditation retreats where you go silent for 10 days.
10 days?
10 days.
Damn. That's a long time.
Oh, by day 3, I'm like, get me out of here. I didn't sign up for this. This is really uncomfortable. I don't like this voice in my head for 3 days nonstop.
Interesting.
However, if you can get over that gap or the bridge of it's uncomfortable, but there's more to it. There was actually a really peaceful spaciousness that I can imagine Steve found on the side of the mountain. I've been able to find moments of those as I'm out in nature or as I'm sitting quiet. And while I haven't gone on the brink of death, I have had moments of feeling that utter sense of peace, complete calm, knowing everything's okay, not being attached to the outcome.
Mm.
I think that's equally as valuable.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Have you heard of the book, Many Lives, Many Masters?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just read that book recently for the first time, and it very much aligns with what you described as the experience that Steve had. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. So I grew up really religious, and now not so much. But I've kind of, like when you're, and I don't know what your beliefs are, but I know for me, the way I was raised, it was like, this is it. These are the facts, right? And this is the nature of reality. This we're just telling you. This is what it is. And like I told you, now that I'm very honest with myself, I go, I very much have a strong aversion to that. Like, and it's not just because of that experience. It's, if anything, I think that's the reason why I no longer wanted to have that experience, was because I realized that doesn't seem right. Like, saying you have all the answers to me is like, it's just the silliest thing. Like if someone says that they know that I know 100% for certain, I'd be like, okay, well, that's just silly. Like, I don't think anybody knows anything 100%. Like what's funny is when I say stuff, I feel like I usually will assign a percentage to it. I'm like, I'm about 72% certain, or like, right. But I mean, I'll go as far as 99.9, but I always know there is this 0.01% chance. Like maybe I'm wrong, right? Like maybe I am. And anybody who says they've got it 100% to me, I was like, get out of here. Now I don't know. Now I know you're not even close to 100% because
I
you
have a
think you
question
got it.
for you.
Yeah.
Has your definition of spirituality changed?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, because, you know, growing up that way, I feel like spirituality was defined as like how well you were abiding by the rules and structure and doctrine that you were being taught. Whereas now it seems more that it's kind of funny because spirituality now, at this point in my journey, feels almost as if it's just about existing. Like the more present you are and just existing as a human being, and like truly existing, like not being worried about the future or being caught up in what's happened in the past, like that to me is more of a measure of someone's level of spirituality than anything else. I think the most spiritual people are the people who are like the most present.
That's a great way to put it.
What
Completely.
what about you? Like, I'm curious, since you asked. I'm curious about you.
My background is similar to yours, and I
Okay.
find this quote by Paulo Coelho really a succinct way to speak to this.
Is that
Those who,
he wrote wait,
The
I know it.
Alchemist,
The Alchemist, that's what it is.
yes, in his book Aleph, he
Okay.
says, those who talk about God the most don't know him, and those that know God don't feel the need to talk about him. I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing that, but it's the same idea that if we are present and connected, I don't need to use words.
Yeah. Doesn't it seem almost as if the people who have truly like gone down that path of like really, really understanding like the nature of reality come back to just that idea of like, oh, I was just way overcomplicating this. I just have to be. I
How
don't have to do
liberating
anything
is
other than
that?
just exist, and then everything's amazing.
Yes.
That's what I found. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think that it's like we were talking about before. This isn't like a judgment of anyone else and how they live their life. But I think that really is the key, is like not attaching yourself to anything other than just where you are right now, right? Like the things that you've experienced in the past, good or bad, right? However you want to label it, the things that you've been through. It doesn't mean you forget them or that you don't might not feel sad about them every once in a while, but like not attaching yourself, defining yourself by those past experiences, but also the same thing in the future, not attaching yourself to a certain outcome and not defining yourself by whatever that outcome might end up being, if that makes sense.
100%. And that actually goes back to the first thing you said about how you live your life. If you can detach from the outcome,
Mm.
there's so much confidence in that. You're present. You are timeless. You're engaged. You're doing it for the intrinsic value of the experience. That is liberating. That is freeing. I think that's so much of the satisfaction of life experience that people are searching for.
Mm.
And it's really fun to be in the body, I think, because we get to decide what avenues we're going to experience that through. For me, it's golf and writing and driving on the open road in my van. For you, like, what are three things for you that you just lose your sense of timelessness? You're completely present and you're able to enjoy the experience.
Oh, I mean, for me, like the podcast is definitely one of them. I mean, I have to pay attention to the time, but I feel like even now I'm looking up at the timer. I'm like, that's how long we've been talking. Holy cow.
Oh my gosh, holy cow.
I feel like it flew by so quickly. Like definitely having conversations with people. I would say music is like that for me as well. Like when I'm playing music, I just looked up, I have my guitar hanging there. Um, and you know what? I feel like the third thing would have to be just a lot of different things. I feel like I find myself kind of losing time just in general. Like I think it comes down to that presence, you know, like having these conversations or playing music or doing something like that. Like the things that I say, oh, this is when I lose time, is because I feel like those things force me into the present, right? Because I'm like in that pattern when it comes to those things. And I think other than that, the more present I am, any experience I have, I feel like can be that way where like I just lose time.
Yes. It's so great.
Yeah. I'm curious. So you said that if I see like a bunch of books behind you, right? How many books have you written?
I've written 3.
And what are they?
It just makes sense. That was the collaboration between Steve and I.
Okay.
A lot of how tos, which
Hmm.
essentially, if you took Miracle on the Mountainside, all of the stories, that's first person, a lot of dialogue. You just get sucked into the character who is Steve, from childhood where he shoots his brother in the face with an arrow to his first divorce to building a retreat in Oregon after his accident because that's what he knew he wanted to do and didn't see how it was going to come together. But if you build it, they will come, as
Hmm.
the Field of Dreams says. So, all the way into his last letter of goodbye. It's a really cool book. But that story, all of those stories get woven into the how to. Well, how do you develop that sense of peace, that sense of forgiveness, that understanding of yourself, how to have better communication with those around you, to have harmony in your relationships? That was the It Just Makes Sense book. And then the Flexible Golfer is something I wrote as a yogi, as someone who enjoys presence and finding balance. It got me into the game. This is what I use to excel pretty dang quickly. And I thought other people might want those tools as well. So that was just a fun, although I'm going to be writing another golf book about my golf adventure, and that's already in the works. So that's a different story.
No, that's amazing. I definitely want to check out, I mean, obviously all of them, but especially the one about the golfing too. I think that's kind of interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I think that was kind of, like when we first started talking and I learned that part of your story, I was like, that's kind of weird. Like that was kind of a weird way to process it. But then as you were describing it earlier, I thought that was like, oh, that's like super appropriate. So I'm just kind of curious to hear like a little bit more about how you, like, how did you decide to do that? And like, were you planning on it being this kind of like therapeutic thing, or did that just what happened, or what?
In one of our conversations back in 2022, Steve said, "You're going to need structure when I'm gone. You
Yeah.
are a free spirit, and so much of the past is going to leave you disoriented," basically. That was the word I used, disoriented. And the structure helps. Getting up to feed my dogs is great. Showing up for other people, really important. In a time period where you're taking away patterns of the past and you don't necessarily know who you are yet in that next chapter, the structure would create a sense of framework. So I didn't fly away or downward spiral. It gave me purpose.
Interesting.
When he
Interesting.
told me that, I knew, well, I have a pretty nomadic life. We did.
Yeah.
What does structure look like? It's not going to be at home volunteering at a center every week. It's not going to be meeting the same friends. All my friends are all over. My mastermind group alone is in 5 different states.
Mm.
I wanted to create a structure that would match my lifestyle, match my personality. And even back then I thought, well, I could play 100 new golf courses. It would get me outside. Nature is one of the best ways to bring us into the present. It enlivens all of our senses, the smells, the textures, the sounds.
Mm.
I'd get to be with people 4 hours at a time. If I liked them, great. If not,
Mm.
I could walk away. I was able to focus on something tangible. If you're thinking about the past or the future, your golf shot's going to suck.
Mm,
You need to be focused and allow the trust of your body, it knows the golf swing, to do its thing.
yeah.
And then what was also wonderful about it is I could travel and do new, so that it gave me a grace period to avoid the emotional landmines of all
Mm,
the familiar things that could cause me to be sad or upset,
mm,
by allowing new experiences that were equal in intensity. So instead of an intensity of being sad, I had the matching intensity of, look at this amazing golf course. Look at this experience. Look at these great people.
mm.
It's almost as though I needed something that spectacular to start to fill the gap and do it in a way that was loose enough in structure that I could figure myself out step by step, because I was recalibrating who I was without this
Yeah,
person by my side, without these daily habits even.
yeah. Well, so that's what I'm curious of, was that, did you know all of this going in, or are these things that you're like in hindsight looking back and like, oh, that was perfect?
Well, in 2022, I literally made my list. I wrote down 100 new golf courses. I did
Oh,
some
okay.
research. I
Wow.
wanted to do it. And I took the list and I put it in my desk drawer. I didn't really want to do it because that meant Steve would be
Mm,
gone. And that was the cost of me going on this adventure. So I tucked it away and let it be. And honestly, it took me some time. It took about a year for me to even really want to golf again.
mm,
I tried, I attempted, I got out there, because I think that's part of building confidence, showing up, not knowing what's going to happen, but you still attempt anyway. You take action because you're going to get feedback from that action. The first time, still a little too sad. Didn't want to golf without Steve. Second time, a couple weeks later, still a little sad. I'm going to put my clubs in the van and do other things. 8 months later, okay, I'll go with my friends on this golf adventure. I'm feeling anxious about it. I'm nervous. My skills are rusty. I don't know if I'm going to like the game again. I showed up. I met new friends. New friends invited me to new places.
mm,
That opened doors to go, oh, yeah, remember that golf adventure I wanted to do? Now I'm ready.
mm. Interesting. You know what? When you were describing the structure and all of that stuff, what it was making me think of was Tony Robbins talking about like the six human needs. I don't know if
Oh,
you're familiar with this or not, but he talks about the six human needs and how they tend to be opposite of each other. Like he says, certainty and uncertainty, like, and significance and connection, and then growth and contribution. And growth and contribution aren't really opposite, but like that we need stability in our lives, but we also need variety, right? That was the sorry, I'm losing them already. But the point is that like what I thought was really interesting is that like you can manufacture certainty, right? Like you can create those things. Like even though it seemed like, hey, well, everything in my life was totally different, there's still things that like you can do. Um, but I also, when I was thinking now about Tony Robbins, there was something you said earlier that I wanted to ask you about, because it made me think of something that I've heard from Tony Robbins, where he says, um, he was actually probably the first person I heard say this, and I adopted it immediately because like that's what I've been thinking, but I couldn't figure out words for it. Was that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. So when you were talking about Steve in that moment where he thought he was going to die, it was just like, well, you kind of surrender because like really ultimately I did do the best that I knew how. And a part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because I like to ask people this, because I believe that like deep down people are good. And when I heard him say that, when I heard Tony Robbins say that, I was like, that's it. That's it. Okay. Like I don't believe that there's such thing as evil people. I believe that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have available to them, whether that's their experiences or their ways of coping, all of that stuff. And so I'm just laying all that out there. I'm just curious if you have any input on that.
yeah, I believe everyone is doing the best they can from their state of consciousness. I hold that to be true. And we have the power of how we then interact with those people. Sometimes we are there to teach, sometimes we're there to learn, sometimes there's better off being space between us. And we're not responsible for their life experience. And at the
Yeah.
same time, I don't need to be a doormat either. If they're going through a painful situation and they want to use me as a punching bag, I have the choice to walk away,
Yeah. I'm
right?
going to do the best I can.
Correct. And it really, I feel like that gives so much freedom in all of our relationships. It takes the pressure off
Mm,
and it allows, I think, more grace for ourselves and others on our own paths of evolution. I don't know what they're learning or going through, and they can't step fully into my shoes.
yeah. So with the context of this, right, that it was at Steve thought potentially the end of his life that he was having these thoughts about doing the best that he can. Um, one of the things in that book, that Many Lives, Many Masters, that they were talking about is the idea that we have all of these lives. So do you believe that as well? Like, do you believe that we're all just gonna have another chance at this anyway?
I believe so.
Okay.
I also believe that doesn't affect my present.
Mm.
I still want to be now
Yeah.
and let the past or past lives be that.
Mm.
Let the future and whatever lies in that realm be that, and celebrate what I know right here, right now. Like you said, existing and not just, but thriving in my existence. How can I make
Mm.
this the best experience possible? When it
Mm.
goes sideways, learn from it. When it's great, put on the gas. I want to go faster. Let's do this.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah, I was curious because I think I think that there's this tendency, because the more I hear from other people, I think that we all have this tendency to just judge ourselves so harshly of like what we've done or the way that we've done things. And I am not like that anymore. I used to, definitely. Like, I used to judge myself so harshly, you know. And I guess I guess technically right now I'm judging my past self for judging the past version of me. Right? So maybe I haven't moved on from it. But the point is that I think we all tend to judge ourselves too harshly. And if we can think of things in the context of like this present moment, and that belief that like we're all really just doing the best that we can with what we have, then there's no room for judgment. Like, if you know, like if you're talking about someone else and you're like, I know that person did to the best of they did that to the best of their ability, even though it fell short, I know that they did the best they could. You would never judge that person, and therefore you have no reason to judge yourself if that is true, that we're all doing the best that we can.
Yeah, judgment and criticism and regret and blame, they feel like really heavy rocks to carry in a
Yeah.
backpack. I just want to set that backpack down. It doesn't belong to me. I want to
Yeah.
be light on this journey.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that too about setting it down, because I feel like I can say this because I've been through some stuff and maybe you would agree, but it really is that simple. It's like, just put it down. Like, it's not even this big thing, right? This is part of the reason why I say that I'm not fully bought into what is taught in schools about mental health, because I'm like, I don't know about that, because in my experience, I realize it is just put it down. Just put it down and you can move on. It's actually believing that it's still affecting you, and that makes it still affect you. Believing that it's this thing you have to carry with you that causes you to still have to carry it. I don't know if that's been your experience too or not.
I agree with that. And I like this phrase: the techniques are simple, the practices are simple, yet they're ongoing.
Mm.
You could put the backpack down, but tomorrow's going to be different.
You pick
There
it back
might be
up for some reason.
you might be tempted to pick up some stuff again.
Mm.
And it's a great practice to continually do this. It's not like our college degree where that alignment's there and that lightness is there and it's ours forevermore. It's a conscious
Mm.
choice. And I believe we do have that. And as you talk about everybody being where they're at, I do the work I do to teach golfers, to teach wellness professionals, to teach these tools to find that lightness, to find that alignment, to make life easier and more fun again. Because I recognize I was the person that didn't have the tools in the past. I
Mm.
recognize people don't have the tools now. And not
Mm.
everybody is ready for the tools, but I know that some people are. And if they are, I'd like to be a resource to offer upliftment And it's nice to know that we can be in this together, that we can learn from each other. We're not on this isolated journey. I think that's so beautiful. And we don't have to have the same experiences to understand one another and to remind each other it's okay to set it down. It's totally okay.
Yeah. Kym, I feel like we could probably talk for hours. So let's wrap it up. Tell me if for anyone listening, if they want to connect with you and what they can get from you, all of that stuff, feel free to let's talk about it now.
Sure. The best place to find me is swagtail.com. You can listen to the first chapter of Miracle on the Mountainside, read it, lots of articles on how to find mind-body balance. There are links to the monthly workshops I teach to learn these tools. And you can go down a lot of different rabbit holes of interest that will uplift you and give you the resources, remind you of your capacity to influence your life in the way you want when you're ready.
Amazing. Kym, this has been a great conversation. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, cheers. You too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.